Hi, I'm here this morning with Heather Chauvin, who is an expert on self-esteem and anxiety. She helps women and children learn to relax and enjoy life more. How are you doing, Heather?
Good. How are you, Annie?
I'm feeling great today. Thanks. I'm delighted that we're having this chance to talk again.
Me too. I'm excited.
So it's back to school time, and I've been getting a lot of emails from kids and some parents too, who are already anticipating worrisome things that might happen this school year. So, I think about the whole trip about worrying and mental movies, those things that I call, the scenarios you play off in your head again and again that may or may not have any connection to reality, but they seem so real. And I'm wondering what advice you can give to parents and to kids too about worrying about back to school stuff.
Awesome. So this is a very stressful time for not only the children themselves, but the parents as well. Because like you said, Annie, a lot of times we're living in the past or we're living in the future. So school time especially, the kids sometimes have had a very negative experience in school and they don't want to replay that into the coming school year. And parents are already dreading and feeling that stress building up in their body of, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I don't want to go through that again. And I hear this too from a lot of parents. And one is being present. I'm a big advocate for mindfulness, for meditation. It doesn't have to be this woo-woo thing, very practical, very practical, down-to-earth strategies that we can help your listeners kind of tap into today so that they don't get to that point of worrying about what's going to happen when school starts.
Now, I hear a dog barking, but I'm not going to worry about it.
Very practical,
I'm
Annie.
I'm here in the moment. Okay, so let me ask you what you mean by not woo-woo, but very practical.
So a lot of,
Oh, now I really hear her. Hold on a second.
no worries, go get her.
Okay,
I'll let
I'll be right
everyone
back.
know. Okay. So a lot of times what happens to the listeners watching this video, a lot of times what happens is our thoughts project out into the future. So every time we can come back to the present moment, which is with our breath, sometimes that's Gracie.
Here's Gracie.
What a cutie. Oh my God, is she a puppy?
Yeah,
So
she's 4
cute.
months old.
Oh my gosh. No wonder why we have to reel her back in.
Yeah. Okay.
Aw. Well,
And
let's,
holding your pet will help you relax too.
yeah, well, let's breathe with Gracie.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No
Now we're back.
worries. No worries. So a lot of times what happens, like I said, we're projecting out into the future of worst case scenario. We have this mind-body connection of our thoughts, having anxious, worry thoughts, and our bodies physically reacting, as in, getting this chest pain or sweatiness. I've had some kids tell me they feel itchy, like they're just crawling in their own skin.
Yeah,
And
that's
they,
so interesting. So it's not even necessarily that there's something right in front of you now, but your thoughts can create these body sensations.
yeah. And I
Amazing.
think I think the number one thing to do for anybody, regardless of if it's gotten really, really bad. A lot of people have had panic attacks and actually had outbreaks and thought they were allergic to something. That's not always the case. It's our stress building up in our body and it needs a way to escape. And we just haven't been paying attention to it because our culture is so fast paced, especially when we get back into school, that we're not paying attention to how we feel inside or how we just what's going on around us. So mindfulness, or using something like meditation, when I said in a non-woo-woo way, a very practical down-to-earth strategies that you can do, as in breathing. But number one, if you are not aware of what is causing those thoughts or those physical sensations and how to control them, or catching them before they start,
Yeah.
you can't help it.
So the first step is being aware of what's going on.
Yeah. So for example, sometimes, okay, so for example, a child is going to school and it's not so much the work. It has nothing to do with academic pressure. It's the social anxiety that they get. So they're walking into a new class or a group of new people, and they're not aware that how their body is reacting. So when they can become aware that, okay, I'm having these physical sensations, now the anxiety is happening when I'm approaching the group, but almost what happens before that. You're in class, you're looking at the clock, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to go outside in 10 minutes. Your thoughts, it's like a creeping cloud that kind of comes. And what really happens is in that moment, Annie, that's when the anxiety attack happens. But a lot of times people aren't aware. That's what I call the red zone, when it's just like, boom.
You're in the middle of it.
Yes. And people are like, I had no idea this was going to happen, because they're not paying attention to the yellow zone.
Okay, so I'm wondering, Heather, could parents, for example, the night before help their kids by imagining what the morning entry into a classroom would be like, so the kid can play it out in the safety and comfort of home, maybe even in the bed, and then you are feeling like, okay, I've got this movie in my head, but I can control some of the anxiety. I can learn to recognize what's coming up and then hopefully manage it in healthier ways.
Yeah. So yes, exactly. So like you were saying, this movie playing in your head of what's going to happen, just flipping the channel, putting a different movie on. So for example, if you know your child is very anxious and very nervous, lay down with them. Mm-hmm. Even if you think, I don't have time for this, you have to make time for this, because if you don't, it's just going to get worse. So put everything else off. Ask yourself, what are your priorities? And if your priorities are to help your child, then you're going to have to take a good 20 minutes to do this with them. And you're just going to lay down with them, and they're going to just hold space for them. Be open and go.
What does that mean, hold space for them?
Hold space is just laying there with them and actively listening, as in not giving advice, not doing anything, just saying what's wrong and letting them spew it out, letting them talk. And if they're having a hard time communicating what's wrong, then just sit there in silence with them. Because sometimes it takes a while for not just children, but for all of us to kind of articulate how we are feeling.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe just giving them little seeds of, are you nervous? And then sit there for a while. After you get the conversation going, what you can do is ask them, invite them, close their eyes, and kind of walk through. Sometimes when we close our own eyes, it's easier too, and we can walk through the step by step. So imagine yourself, walking into your school.
I'm closing my eyes, and I'm gonna imagine myself being a fourth grader.
Awesome. So you're going into fourth grade. This is your first day of school. You're walking up to the school. Asking them, how do you feel? What's going on inside your body? Mm-hmm. And if they're like, oh, well, I feel butterflies and my palms are getting sweaty. And you're like, okay, well, visualize yourself just kind of shaking your hands, and the palms are not sweaty anymore. You kind of wiped them off. And you take a deep breath in, and you put a smile on your face, and all of a sudden you feel this excitement going through your body, like you're happy. And those butterflies have kind of dissipated. They've kind of left. And you're opening the front door, and you're seeing a teacher there who's welcoming you with open arms.
Nice.
And you're walking into your classroom, and you're seeing your desk, and you go over and sit down, and you're feeling really, really good about it. And you see your teacher and everybody else around you, and everybody's just as excited to be there as you are. And even though there's new butterflies, it's a new place. And then you can bring in the senses. So what do you see? And you can ask your child, what does it look like? What does it feel like? Do you hear anything? Is Gracie in the background at school with you? You can bring in all these senses, and what happens, you can open your eyes now, Annie.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that was so nice.
Well, that was just a little tidbit that wasn't right, in there. But what happens is when you create this experience, when they walk into that, it's almost like the second time that they've been there.
I know it's exactly what you're saying. And so then it's a dress rehearsal for what's going to come. And what the child learns from what you just did in that practice session was that he or she can calm themselves, that it doesn't matter so much. No one else pushes the buttons. I can take a slow, deep breath and I can relax. I can relax. And I can do that anywhere, no matter what's going on around me. That's so important.
Yeah.
Now I hear Gracie saying to me, I want you to open the back door, Mom. And so as a mom, when my kid wants something and I'm not there, there's some anxiety that I start to feel. So you keep talking because I have one more question for you while
Awesome.
you answer this question.
Will do.
This question has to do with how do parents calm themselves about their anxiety, about their kid going into a new situation, especially if, as you say, last year wasn't so great, and I don't want my kid to have to go through that again. So what can parents do to help themselves be calmer?
Perfect. Okay, so as a parent, to help yourselves be calmer, one, you have to practice what you preach. If you're seeing anxiety in your children, you must be able to cope with your own anxiety. And if a coping skill is not, if you don't have positive coping skills, then you can't expect your child to have positive coping skills as well.
So we teach this by modeling.
Yes, yes. Okay. So teach by modeling. If you are really worried about, I don't want this to happen next year, well, one, you're already in a negative mindset. So shift your perspective and go, how can this be way better than last year? Maybe sit down with your child and say, what significant differences, what do we need to change in order to have a successful year? Or in order, instead of thinking about the whole year, how about we go, in order to have a successful first week? Take it week by week, have a sit down. If you need to talk to the principal, if you need to talk to your child's teacher, then do that. But at the same time, there's also this lifestyle shift that happens, which is what kind of the work that I do with the whole entire family, which is changing the way we function as a whole. Most of the time we are living in the past or the future. And when we can really become aware of how we feel, how are we coping? How are we reacting? I know sometimes when, before I started doing this work, my children would scream or do something and I would instantly react and be like, stop it, don't do this. And I would get so angry, not at them, but at myself going, why did I do that? It was this instant reaction. I had no idea why I did it and I couldn't stop. And then once I started practicing mindfulness, not just breathing and this practice for myself, almost like a lifestyle shift, I could feel those feelings creeping up. So for example, let's just say lunch is at noon and, it's been 1 or 2 o'clock and we haven't eaten yet for whatever reason. I know I'm hungry and I'm paying attention. And then when I'm like, there it goes, there's that creepy anger coming up again, I know exactly why. It's because I haven't eaten. So that's what I need to take care of first. So it's really paying attention to your body and going, interesting, what's going on? What is that? Rather than instantly reacting and going, stop it, and then kind of beating yourself up, because I know how guilty we can feel as parents after. There's a lot going on, and we kind of need to stop.
I was just thinking about this whole bring it to the family. Yes, talking to teachers and finding out about the school environment is really important, but there's stuff within the family that's much easier to modify than the whole school environment. I've often said that the beginning of the new school year is a great time to reassess and debrief from the previous school year, because you have enough distance and you could say, as a family, what did we do in terms of the morning getting ready to go to school and out the door? What did we do on the other end of the day? Snack time in the afternoon, dinner, homework stuff, getting ready for bed. What did we do last year as a family on school nights and days that really worked? And what did we do that really wasn't so helpful, that increased our stress and anxiety as a family? If, for example, we were staying up too late at night so that getting up in the morning was a real struggle. And even if it's only a struggle for one person, it's a struggle for everyone because everyone has to get out the door. So there may be unnecessary yelling and blaming and rushing around and grabbing food instead of just sitting and enjoying it. rushing out the door without checking that everything you need with you for the day is actually with you, maybe even driving unsafely because you're late.
Yeah.
All of that stuff is unhelpful. So to have a debriefing session with the family and say, okay, each of us, what did each of us do last year that really worked well? And what would we like to change? I think those opportunities for kids and parents talking together would be a great stress reliever.
Yeah, and I want to point out that this isn't necessarily easy. I know sometimes we have a facade that like change is easy. It's not. There will be resistance within ourselves of, oh gosh, but that's not easy, or I don't know, I don't want to do that. And resistance with the children, like getting into a new routine. It's not easy, but we have to like push through that resistance, flow through that resistance. But at the same time, you also have to ask yourself: how happy were you with your old habits, and is it time to make new habits? New change, like I said, is not easy, but it can. You have to think about the future. What's going to happen how's it going to affect you personally, but how's it also going to affect your children's well-being and the family as a whole?
I think it's really important what you say. Change is difficult, and I think we tend to be creatures of habit. Even if the habit we're into is not so pleasant, at least it fits like a glove, and so we're familiar with it. But parents really need to take a leadership role here when any kind of change is happening for the family, because it's for the good of the family to work together, to communicate. Some kids really don't like surprises. And you really need to give everybody a heads up. From now on, this is what we're going to do. We're going to meet in the kitchen 15 minutes early for breakfast so we can actually have a good meal and be more relaxed as we start the day.
Yeah.
This is great advice.
And stick to it for at least 2 to 3 weeks, because the first week could be hell.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest.
I don't have time to eat. I just want to grab. No. We're going to sit here. Yeah. And I think those changes do pretty rapidly show that they're worth it.
Yeah. Yep. Anything
This
is
is
when
great.
we stick to it. Yeah.
Okay. So have your children started school yet, Heather?
No, they start in a few weeks. The first week after September.
Okay.
Yeah, so we still have a few weeks.
I know that here in the States, some communities have already started school, which I think is ridiculous because I don't know. I grew up in New York. I'm on the West Coast now, but I grew up in New York, and you had summer until Labor Day, which is the first Monday in September. And I love summer. I love being away from the schedule. But if your kid's going back to school, there are ways to help him and you be more relaxed about going into the new school year.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you very much for this. These tips have been great. And thank you for your patience with my puppy, Gracie. She's learning the new routine here. We've only had her for 5 weeks. But
gosh.
I really appreciate your time, Heather. And I hope you and your kids have a wonderful school year. And tell me, before we sign off, where can people find out more about the work that you do?
They can find me on my website, heatherchauvin.com. Last name spelled CHAUVIN.com. And I'm always blogging, and they're welcome to email me or connect. And they can find me on Facebook. Always got good things going on.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.